2 years ago, with the help of 5 fellow Bleach fanatics, I ranked every Bleach arc from worst to best, and while that video did exceptionally well, the taste in the video was exceptionally bad. I disagree with the entire order of the arcs, as seen in my response to all the comments in that video. So I thought for my first video in 2024, let's remake that video, but with only good taste. By that I mean with solely my own ranking. So without all further ado, hello guys, my name is Pokesel, welcome to my channel where we make a ton of different Bleach related content, and let's dive deep into the Bleach universe, ranking each arc from start to finish. Bleach is a masterpiece of a story, enriched with lots of fantastic arcs filled with epic battles, tearful moments, and head-scratching twists. When it comes to these great arcs, oftentimes comes great debates on which one is the best and which one is the worst of them. Keep in mind, none of the arcs we are ranking today are inherently bad. In fact, I don't think any of them is below a 7 out of 10. They're all fantastic in their own right and all have pros and cons to each individual one. When we are ranking them today, there is a few set of rules that we're going to be using. For example, it will be mostly based on the manga unless the anime adds something of value to the story. Some clear examples would be Haribel's backstory in the Arrancar arc, or the changes made to the squad's Zero Conflict and Thousand Year Blood War. Essentially, the manga and positive changes / additions in the anime. Anything that was negatively adapted through the anime format will not be taken into account of the storytelling, nor will be used to negatively impact scoring. So with that being said, the worst arc in all of Bleach is actually the first arc. Big surprise there. The Substitution Nagami arc is chapters 1 through 70. Now it should be noted that a lot of Bleach fans really lump this arc and the Soul Society arc together. However, like most videos, I will be separating them. I think that as stories, they should be separated overall. The Substitution Nagami arc is as stated, chapters 1 through 70, and as an arc, it feels extremely episodic in its first half. Some might call it a monster of the week type of arc. And while at parts I do agree, it never feels boring like most monster of the arc stories do. While some sections do not play off each other, the characters do progress throughout, and while reading, you learn small pieces of information about the world and the characters that really drive the plot forward as you explore the themes of the arc, and how the characters address grief differently. I think it does a great job establishing the relationships of each of the characters as well. For example, I can take any one character from the story and address how they interact with each character differently, as Kubo exceptionally displays how each character will play in the overall narrative of these first 70 chapters. For example, Orihime feels connected to Ichigo and has a crush on him. Her best friend is Tatsuki. Now Tatsuki's childhood friend is Ichigo. Every character feels like they are at the same school, and you can tell that through their interactions. It doesn't feel unrealistic or unnatural between the characters. The relationships feel real, and as characters, the relationships feel very individual, like they could be a standalone character. Another ability Kubo proves in this arc is his capability as not only an artist, but a writer. He can establish plot lines and expositions through the smallest character, without making it feel like it's a teacher giving you a lesson. For example, Yuichi the Parakeet. His storyline, while only an episode, provides a ton of information on hollows and how souls in general work. It tells us about the intelligence of some hollows and how some hollows will never enter the Soul Society. It shares details about how hollows can be really foul on the inside and not just having this desire to eat, but this level of intelligence. How they can put a soul inside of something else like a bird just to torture it because they find a distinct pleasure in torturing their prey. And how the person you were before you turned into a hollow has significant impact on what kind of a hollow you're going to be and the level of cruelty that you'll display as a hollow. It also shows us more information later on that can be discussed in the next arc about what the Soul Society really is like. But all this information, just being in a single piece of the story, is incredible, and of that, Kubo manages to create this emotional bond to such a small, insignificant character. Another very special moment during this arc is Ichigo's conflict with Grand Fisher. Is absolutely phenomenal, and the snippets of foreshadowing built throughout this arc is awesome, especially in that single fight. Heck, Kubo adds some of these smallest details and makes even the smallest things important. For example, the story of Uryu. Uryu initially is introduced as a classmate of Ichigo and the last of the Quincy. However, directly prior to his introduction, when Ichigo attacks a hollow at an abandoned hospital that has a crowd of people, we can see Uryu's hand moving forward because he can see the hollow as well, and he's about to take action right before Ichigo jumps in, and this small detail preludes one of the best storylines in the first arc of the story, Uryu's character. It's small details like this that really drives my love for the Bleach franchise, as every time I reread the story, I catch new story elements that may have not been seen on the first watch through or even read through. The largest complaint I can see is a lot of the earlier villains in this arc lack a level of depth that the villains later on have. While Ohime's brother and Grand Fisher are interesting and diverse when it comes to how their conflicts come into play, we don't have any villains like Aizen, Grimmjow, or Ukiura that just top them all and really stand out comparatively to the future arcs. In fact, the villains in the first arc have to be some of the weakest. However, while each of them carry a little bit of interesting things to them, it really helps drive home the main characters of the storyline and how they process grief. It's a sacrifice for the main cast of characters to truly develop the more human side of them. The second criticism of this arc I can see is the pacing of the arc. While I never got bored personally of this arc, I can definitely see why some people might get bored of this arc. I could definitely see a case being made for this section of the story in the manga to be just slightly shorter. However, I think this would take away some of the emotional bonding we as readers have for the cast. This level of emotional bonding that the story creates is a trade-off that I think is important, as without this wonderful introduction, later arcs would suffer. While this arc may be just a 7 out of 10 in my opinion, future storylines definitely would not be able to be that 10 out of 10 without this one existing in the first place, as it took the necessary time to properly explain the universe of Bleach and the natural order of things before we enter the unnatural. The most memorable moment of this arc for me is actually between two. The first one being Rukia's departure and her saying goodbye. This includes Ichigo's conflict with Renji and Byakuya, by the way, and Renji and Byakuya's introduction in that one little moment right there. The second moment would be Grand Fisher's conflict, which in my opinion is severely underrated, as it's the first masterpiece Bleach fight in my opinion. It really is the moment that you can see the beginning of this masterpiece being written. And as for Rukia's goodbye to Ichigo, it's just a truly emotional moment that's really well done. Anyway, without all further ado, let's go to my number 4. Number 4 is actually going to be very controversial, and by that I mean it's the Soul Society arc. This arc is widely considered to be Bleach's greatest arc of all time, and while I love it and I think it's truly brilliant in many ways, I also think that what comes after is simply better. Soul Society, like the Substitute Shinigami arc, lays a lot of the foundation of what Bleach is and the story it spreads. This arc is primarily world building and important for establishing the main organization of the franchise. It also has some of the best twists and turns throughout the story, some of the best character introductions in the story, and the best villain reveal in all of fiction. The arc has a lot of strengths to it, and I think that mostly lies in the world building that Tite Kubo does throughout the arc. The strengths we see in the Substitute Shinigami arc are excelled in this one. Kubo does an excellent job portraying the Shinigami as not necessarily good or evil. Yes, our protagonist is trying to save Rukia, but Kubo creates a sense of drama by expanding the Shinigami's characters and their world in general. We get to see the world through their eyes, not just our protagonist's eyes. And this becomes very normal throughout Kubo's storytelling and his technique. He tells the story through the villain's eyes as well, or should I say the antagonist's eyes. It becomes this excellent, thrilling adventure filled with mystery. He does a great job diverting the audience's attention by making it known that there is something happening behind the scenes. Aizen's fake death, making it seem like someone from the inside is controlling things. The Shinigami are worried as they believe Ichigo has the power to kill captains. They believe Ichigo killed Aizen, and it creates an extremely compelling storyline which sets up the best plot lines that get fulfilled in the Arrancar arc and beyond. When it comes to the Soul Society arc, there is a lot to enjoy and love, and so little to dislike. Another issue I had is while some plot lines were continued, some created, some were abandoned. However, these abandoned plot lines could have been managed to be solved off screen. For example, after the Soul Society arc, they spend a week relaxing. Why doesn't Orihime seek to reunite with her brother? She could have done this off camera, however, even just a mention of the desire after the adventure would have been an interesting plotline for her character, to say the least. That being said, the in-canon explanation is the Soul Society is massive. There are so many souls which reside there that it makes sense for her to be unable to find her brother. Now that's just one example. Now keep in mind, it's not a requirement for a show to touch all of its untouched plot points. So this is not a negative thing, but just something that would have been interesting to touch on. One of the largest detractors of this arc for me has to be Ganju's character. This may affect my personal rating, but I absolutely hate Ganju. He is annoying and really Trash, I'm sorry. While there are definitely characters throughout the future arcs I dislike, Ganju is just in a large portion of the scenes throughout the arc. Now I don't want this to discredit Soul Society, I love the arc overall, and I want to make it absolutely clear that this arc is masterfully written, and in my books is a 9 out of 10. Dang, you guys are probably thinking I'm setting myself up by making the second worst arc of Bleach a 9 out of 10. Now coming in third we have the Arrancar arc, which follows chapters 188 through 423. This arc is one of the hardest arcs to rank, because while Soul Society is more consistent than the Arrancar arc in quality, the Arrancar arc has higher highs in my opinion. It also has lower lows though. Ukiyo vs Ichigo, Genichimaru vs Aizen, Aizen vs Ichigo, Grimmjow vs Ichigo. Heck, every Espada fight was enjoyable in some way or another. I think the Arrancar arc is so incredible as it connects to so many of the plot points that get set up throughout Soul Society. The Soul Society arc is a setup arc for this arc, and this arc succeeds in almost every way. Arrancar vs Rukia touches on the dark traumatic past of Rukia and what holds her back as an individual. She overcomes this and it's phenomenal for her character. Mayuri vs Granz is this intense conflict between the idea of progression and the thought of perfection. Which one makes true science? It's so much fun to watch these two scientists battle each other using their individual gadgets or abilities to overcome one another, both containing such high knowledge of science. And on top of that, as mentioned, it has this philosophical ending with one of the best speeches in Bleach in anime. Mayuri is fun to watch as he's just always one step ahead because he is a scientist, and according to Mayuri, Granz is not. Byakuya vs Amari is interesting as it shows the growth Byakuya has had from originally placing his duty to the Shinigami above his duty to his sister and wife, to now viewing Rukia as his only pride. The growth and development present throughout this fight is absolutely amazing, and the great fights don't stop there. After Zamari, we have all of the Grimmjow fights. Grimmjow has become a fan favorite for good reason. He has this level of energy to him that really captivates the viewers. His conflict with Ichigo and anger towards him was unmatched. Even if Aizen forbade it, Grimmjow was going to fight Ichigo. He had multiple conflicts with him, and he caused Ichigo so much trauma. In addition to that, Grimmjow's backstory was also interesting as it had some powerful emotions attached to the conflict. Another great battle was Nenoitra's 3 conflicts. What makes this arc incredible is that it's not just 1 or 2 fantastic battles, but it's a long list of great fights. Each Espada feels unique and intriguing, and when it comes to the entire story of Bleach, it is the most developed villain group of the story, as most of the members have a deep backstory and represents this aspect of death. Before continuing with Nenoitra's conflicts, let's talk about this. What is an aspect of death? Aspects of death are something that's integral to each of the Espada's battles, and characters at large. It's a theme that represents their character and how they interact with the world. It also has to do with their demise and their death. Aranero represents greed, and in that, he got too greedy in his conflict with Rukia. He lost because he was not trying to just kill her, but also emotionally destroy her. Granz is madness, and this is the perfect representation for his character. He is a mad scientist, if we can even call him a scientist. Zamari is intoxication. Bro is allergic to beer. Obviously this is not about alcohol, but more so his ability to control others' behavior with his eyes. Grimmjow is destruction, which makes sense with his fun personality, and it was his destructive behavior that eventually led to his downfall. Nenoitra is despair, and we'll hop into the Nenoitra conflict now. Nenoitra's first conflict was against Ichigo, a badly wounded one, and he absolutely nearly killed the man. After nearly killing Ichigo, he fights a revamped Nell. And this conflict is awesome, especially after everything that Nenoitra did to hurt Nell. It was so awesome seeing her toy with him. Unfortunately, in the end, she was not strong enough to keep up, and Nenoitra won the battle. However, the reveal that Nell was formerly Espada number 3 was absolutely insane. It was this unique addition to Kubo's lore when it came to the story of Bleach. It really added a layer to all the earlier adventures that took place in Hueco Mundo. Finally, Nenoitra's conflict with Kenpachi has to be one of the best fights in this arc. It adds this level of detail as Kubo really nailed their matchup. Their personalities really reflect each other, and Inotra's desire to be killed in battle matched with his backstory, and it would just end up being this great aspect in addition to the story. After Inotra, we have the best battle in the entire series, and that is the conflict between Ukiura and Ichigo. This conflict of hope versus nihilism was phenomenal. I love their battle, and I just cannot do it justice in this video. But this battle alone makes this arc a masterpiece. I would watch 1,000 hours of paint drying to witness this battle for the first time again. While Ukiura does not need a backstory, Kubo did add one in Unmasked too. This battle is incredible, it's insightful. Ukiura is one of those peaks in storytelling that rarely gets topped in my opinion, and it's what adds a lot of flavor to the franchise. His battles are some of my favorite in the series, but his final battle is my favorite conflict in all of fiction. I do not even need to discuss what his aspect of death is, as it's obvious, it's nothingness. I love how in Ukiura's final moments he finally understands what a heart is. The dynamic between him, Ichigo, and Arahime is incredible and convincing. Ukiura is a phenomenal villain. Period. Like, I don't have to go further than that. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about Ukiura, but I don't want this video to be 30 minutes about Ukiura. Haribel versus Toshiro. Now keep in mind, this conflict, while great in the manga, is so much better as seen in the animated version. Adding Haribel's backstory really drives into why she values loyalty so much. Plus, it is through her subordinates where we get to the opportunity to see the battle of Aeon versus Yamamoto, which is unfortunately Yamamoto's only W before he gets smashed. Baragon's conflict is really epic as well. Seeing Soifone and Hachi work together with lots of unique abilities and Kido involving this level of strategy and analysis is so cool. Baragon's final moment throwing the axe is great as well. One final way of displaying his displeasure of working under Lord Aizen, his hatred for the man. Finally, my second favorite Espada battle, and that is Stark versus Shinsuke and Ukitake. Stark is a really unique take on Solitude, and we also get the opportunity to see two Captain Shikais, which added flavor to the battle. The battle is one filled with strategy as well. Of course, I'm going to try to rush this last part because this Arrancar section of the video has taken up quite a bit. The next moment that needs to be spoken about is Gin Ichimaru versus Aizen. I mean, I made an entire video about Gin Ichimaru, go peep it. Gin is just such a great character from start to finish, and this final piece of the puzzle brings all these mysteries that have been built up since the Soul Society arc together. It's just each piece of the puzzle of his character is just now finally complete, and it's completed in such a beautiful fashion that really drives home why Gin Ichimaru is my favorite character in the entire story. The final part of the Arrancar arc I'd like to talk about in a positive light would be Aizen's battle. They're all amazing, from Kisuke Yoichi and Ishin versus Aizen, Yamamoto versus Aizen, Aizen versus the Gotai 13, where he just demolishes everyone, all the way up to Aizen versus Ichigo. They all hold so much weight in the entirety of the series. While Gin may be my favorite character, Aizen is definitely a close second. All of his speeches, all of his conflicts, and every moment this legend, this beautiful man speaks, it just brings home why Bleach is a masterpiece, because this one villain is so incredible, and at the end of the day, the end goal of his mission isn't even that evil. Actually concerning once you start to take a closer look at his character. Moving towards the negatives of this arc, while there were a lot of positives, there are definitely some problems I had, and that's going to happen no matter what when you have an arc that has this many chapters. The majority of my issues are based off of pacing issues and the overall length. I feel like the arc is too long, and while there are a ton of great battles, there are equally a ton of not so great conflicts, which is what makes it just barely above the Soul Society story. I love how everything plays off, how each of the Soul Society's foreshadowings are finally like coming to light, but it still scores the same as the Soul Society for me, which is a 9 out of 10. Again, it had sections of it that were 10 out of 10 easily, but just taking all the slower parts and all the not so great parts and adding everything together, it equals out as a 9 out of 10. Following this, we have the most controversial part of this video. Now, I don't know if I'm going to see the light at the end of the road, as my YouTube channel is going to get cancelled and I'm never going to be able to make another video, because the third best arc in the entire story of Bleach would be the Lost Agent arc, also known as the Fullbringer arc. Am I cancelled yet? Am I still around? Who knows, we'll find out when this video is posted. In the last arc ranking video, this was by far the biggest change. While others ranked the Lost Agent arc as the worst, I always believed it was the second best in the manga after rereading the story. I mean, it's definitely the shortest part of Bleach, spanning only from chapters 424 to 479. But in that time, it is also one of the most beautifully told stories. The inner conflict Ichigo has to go through is incredible, where the only people he has sworn to protect are now becoming his enemy. Tsukishima, Ginjo are both excellent villains. The reveal of the truth behind the Soul Society's corruption and the fact that it closes certain plot points up is great. I am not going to lie and say I wish we saw more from Chad throughout this arc, or that this arc was longer. But overall, I really enjoyed the Lost Agent arc, and I think it brings us back to what Bleach is all about after such a long previous arc. The story of Bleach is about a teenager discovering and accepting his identity, and this arc really brings us back to that. I love the anime additions to the story. I feel like to really experience this arc, you have to watch the animated version. This is one of the few arcs that I believe is actually better throughout the anime version. While I would give the manga version a solid 9.5 out of 10, the anime version for me would be an easy 10 out of 10. Just with the few small changes that were made, especially towards the end of the story. The second spot will not have any spoilers in it. I'm going to talk very briefly about it, mostly because not a lot of people have seen this section of the story, and that would be the Bleach light novels for Can't Fear Your Own World. This set of volumes shares a lot of information, especially when it comes to the corruption and world building of the Soul Society and the Bleach universe in general. We get to take a look at never before seen events that really develop and explain past characters throughout the story. And while I don't want to go into details, I enjoyed every volume and chapter of these 3 volumes, and it is easily a 10 out of 10 story. The first spot would easily be the Hell arc. This chapter is filled with pure excitement and value when it comes to the lore of the Bleach universe. Now, I'm obviously joking. While the extra chapter was a phenomenal addition to Kubo's tale, it was also only the length of 3 chapters. So while great, it is actually ranked below the first arc in my ranking. I just never mentioned it because of its size. I didn't think that would really need to be mentioned. I think the audience can already tell which arc I believe is the best. I think the best arc in all of Bleach is the 1,000-Year Blood War, and I believe this prior to the anime adaptation. The arc is simply amazing as a whole. Literally every conflict builds off the last, leading to a phenomenal conclusion, even if many dislike it. There's so many things I love about this last section of Bleach, and that's why I was so upset when it ranked only 3 once averaging everybody's scores. I mean, this last section is just truly incredible, from the insane start, including the Stern Rider's threatening level, including the stealing of the Bankais, Yamamoto's Bankai reveal, the first invasion in general, the eventual death of our goat. Heck, Byakuya's speech is insanity. The development present in Byakuya's character is insane. I hate the comparison of Byakuya and Itachi, because as characters they are very different. Itachi doesn't develop in the present tense of the Naruto story. He develops in the past tense of the Naruto story. He is a great character by all means. I love Itachi. S tier character. However, Byakuya develops in the present tense of the story. He has a promise to protect Rukia, but originally completely disregards it until later in the story. He learns to put his trust and faith into Ichigo and eventually go from wanting to kill Ichigo to realizing he has failed and that Ichigo is the last hope of society itself. He has to ask Ichigo to save the Soul Society, even though Ichigo has no duty to do so, because he has failed. His pride is now meaningless. And the panel where he finally decides to ask Ichigo to save the Soul Society, boy, that panel and scene is just raw. Emotions are high, and we all believed Byakuya died. Unfortunately, he didn't. Anyway, after the first invasion, dealing with the captain's mini-training arc, and the Misaki flashback followed by Ichigo finally accepting his identity, incredible journey by the way, The Blade is Me is the greatest chapter in all of Bleach. While it's not about the pure value it brings to the story, and Ichigo's character is never seen again in the story. Literally, the entire story of Bleach is leading to this one specific chapter of the story, and it is one powerful moment that lives up to all the build-up that's present. Anyway, I could talk about this moment for literally hours because I love the Blade is Me chapter that much, and the anime version, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, once the second invasion starts, the hype continues as we get sections like Renji's True Bankai, Rukia's Bankai, Aznat vs Rukia, Bambi vs Kamamura, Mayuri vs Gazelle, Squad Zero now that the anime version of that conflict has been released. Honestly, the only lame moment in the entire arc is 2 things. The first being this Stern Rider, Bro wears a diaper in his release date. My second issue comes down to the line that would be in the third part of the story, and that would be Gerard versus everyone. However, the animated version has not adapted that far, so I don't know if it's going to be changed to be superior. I also don't want to spoil that portion of the story because I know a lot of my viewers haven't read the manga and they're anime onlys. So without all further ado, my final rating of this arc is 10 out of 10. While there are a few small things throughout the Thousand Year Blood War that should be changed, they're either being changed or they aren't that big of a deal to negatively impact the score that much. I firmly believe that the height of the highs and the pure amount of the highs outdo anything negative about this arc. It is the most fun I have ever had reading an arc in Bleach. The journey of Ichigo finally finding his identity is truly brilliant. But hey, this is just my ranking of the Bleach story arc. I'm curious to see what's yours. Leave them below in the comment section, and just remember, if you don't subscribe and like, you are Pepe's biggest fan. Thank you for watching. This has been Pokesel, finally back from whatever 2023 was, signing out.